You know, it's really something else. It's very important. I have these books here. One of them was actually co authored or has a forward by the lieutenant governor, the former lieutenant governor. And it is edited by somebody who was, she was under the direction of the Secretary of the Senate for the state of Texas. And she had an official position in addressing archives for the state of Texas. And in this book on the history, these two books on the history of the Texas Senate that was published by Texas A&M University Press, you know, what I did is actually part of a precedent that exists in early Texas, Republic and the state. You know, there was all kinds of fascinating things. I've contended for a long time. The state of Texas and the Republic of Texas has a very vast, rich history. It's one of the reasons I think that the old-timers, the dead people, prefer me over the living. Various things about it just seem to be less than palatable based upon what other people want to try to contrive as a representation. But nothing I've actually done or said in accordance with the actual history of both the Republic and the state of Texas is not only without precedent, but is delegitimate. I've done everything I needed to do to actually justify my position. And I'm also in a context where, again, in accordance with the history of Texas, there are pretenders. There are infiltrators. There are others that are masquerading as if they were somehow anointed to be in a position. And the false claim they have has a very specific and material impact for the people. This is a very significant part of the history of the state of Texas. And so I am no more or less a part of it than any other. And part of it is this specific concept that Texas has, including regarding its own history with homesteading and its own understanding of the intent and the following through of the intent of the word. If you have a disputation, it would have behooved you to have at least had two witnesses present and in person when you did it. Now, I'm responding because I've had this situation, and perhaps you have as well. There is a particular technology company that provides what they allege is a form of security service. They have a process, and this process is something that has been accommodated, or rather inculcated, by other areas, including areas that have to provide security for buildings or events. Actual specific locations. I've been to several locations that has applied this specific company's technology. And within the last 8 months, I was witness to what they offered in terms of a presentation associated with the manner in which that technology is effectuated. One of the things it does is it creates a very significant zone wherein things are allowed to be amassed and to be assessed for whether or not they're going to be able to pass on to the next level. Unfortunately, I believe that this technology has been abused. That what has happened is, without some sort of support or reinforcement from appropriate regulatory and compliance agencies in assuring that appropriate characterization is provided at both the point of initial access as well as the duration of or the context surrounding the clearance, that what ends up getting through is not what should have gotten through. And far too much of what should have gotten through doesn't end up getting through. And the problem is that if you also analyze this in the context of a kind of automation effectuated through abuse of the governmental processes, including the three branches of government, specifically but not exclusively the judicial branch, or departments or agencies allegedly authorized by the legislature, and what you have is a process of replication of the false identification of that which is allowed to get through. And so you have, by need, this effort to aggregate more and more of that which is not permitted to get through and pool it to allow for a homogenization of the characterization so that it can cover the deficiencies of that which was allowed to get through with a false claim. Metrics associated with this technology are significant. We're talking about more than 90% of information is automatically excluded. As a matter of fact, what is allowed to be identified as acceptable for some sort of internal circulation by their metric scheme is at 1%. So if you're only allowing 1% of information that is a part of a transmission series to be able to get through, and you let the wrong 1% get through for too long, what does that end up doing to the integrity of your alleged technological regime? If you have a particular disputation about your understanding of how you feel like I'm a reflection of something that you allege has been stolen or expropriated from you, then you may be correct. But let me tell you something. For over a year now, I don't get any indication that anybody sees my sites. I don't get any emails myself. I don't get any phone calls unless there's some sort of spam that is at exactly a specific time in order to alter the bandwidth. And yet I see how what I have as content in my videos ends up circulating in many, many other places under many, many other identities. Now, if somebody's contrived to isolate me and create a false paradigm of misinformation in order to try to test out rationales, I contend, and have contended this whole time, you kidnapped me. You kidnapped me. All I can do is maintain consistency. And the ironic thing is, the more you do this, and the longer the duration, the less likely it is you will be identifiable or identified as anything other than somebody who kidnapped somebody for absolutely no just cause. You kidnapped me. You didn't charge me. You didn't confront me. You did all of these other crimes. You can make whatever justification you want, but in the end, you don't actually have a justification. And what ends up happening? Well, you have needs. Presumably, there are needs. Presumably, things need financing. Presumably, things need administering. Presumably, things need to be acknowledged and accredited. And yet, you insist you had the authority to run a test, and you insist I'm supposed to be subjected to the terms of your test regime, and yet you refuse to even authenticate your identity. And so all I see reflected back to me over and over again is vast possibility and wealth that is completely squandered. Completely squandered. And it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way. And in the meantime, I'm 44 now. I'll be 45 in a year. As a woman, a natural human, biological being, I'm at the prime of my fertility and my productivity potential. And because you don't want to acknowledge how badly you squandered the last 25 years, because you don't want to have to acknowledge what you thought you were entitled to for the 10 to 15 years before that, you have a woman of childbearing age that has no debts to herself, none at all, that has infinite potential and is being completely squandered while you insist on providing some feedback, some backlash that is constantly trying to reduce me to an infantilization based upon a sexual proclivity projected onto me by somebody else. You've been doing this nonstop for years. And you've been squandering everything else you could have done. Even if you decided that somebody else fits a profile and you like their presentation more, they don't end up delivering. And that's why you keep coming back to me. Your disappointment is not my concern. I apologize. You're going to have to do something to create some sort of magnetic attraction that sends me somewhere else, besides this constant process of reification and re-authentication of the integrity of what my intent was from the onset. I'm not going to concede you haven't succeeded in killing me. Unfortunately, the refusal to deal with the material factors involved has created that extreme. I'm not ceding, even if all you give me is a teenage girl that was supposed to go have sex. You haven't killed me. In between is all of this other infinite potential squandered every day. Every day. Please, please deal with your own waste. Deal with your own refusal to acknowledge what it is that the actual problem is here. I can keep doing this day after day after day. You can keep only giving me feedback that complains about how they're not getting something they're never going to get from me. In the meantime, if there was any justification for getting it from anyone else, you're going to have fewer people as an option to even get that from. So it behooves you to demonstrate a little maturity and to actually address this at the level it's at. Right? I've been consistent. I've made what I needed to make. I've done what I've needed to do. You actually cannot fulfill whatever it is you think you're going to fulfill unless I concede and allow for you to be the one to claim it. And that's not going to happen. So you're going to have to adjust, and you're going to have to come up with another method. It's going to have to involve actually meeting in person. It's going to have to involve more than one person. It doesn't demonstrate the least little bit of capacity to be responsible for the level this is at. And it's going to involve an honest understanding of the economic and political implications. Okay? Thank you so much for your time and attention today. Thank you so much. But you're going to have to reattenuate. This has gone on too long. You haven't proven a damn thing to justify this. And all you end up doing is ensnaring more and more people into this huge cesspool of waste. Please stop. Please stop.